koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome to the first Risk and Assurance Committee meeting for 2023. We were called something else prior to the last election, Audit and Risk, and we are now Risk and Assurance and play a really important role in assuring for the Council the minimisation of risk and of loss to the Council and the Whanganui community. So it's fabulous that everybody is here today. I'd like to particularly welcome Mayor Andrew to this our first meeting. And is Michael Law here? Oh, thank you. That's fine. And so Michael is a new member. Peter Oscom, Councillor Peter, in your new role as a councillor. And the previous members of the committee, Councillor Kate, Josh and Councillor Jenny. Fabulous that you're all here. Thank you. And other members of council who are sitting in on this committee meeting today, and also members of the executive leadership team from the council. Welcome. It's great that you're here too. And last but not least, great to have you here, David Langford, as our chief executive. So welcome everybody. I'm going to ask Councillor Kate to open our meeting. Thank you.
I oha ki runga ki a Ranganui, I oha ki raro ki a Papatūnuku, te rekina nā mea kino ki te pai atia. Uhia mai o korowai aroha, ke taonga māmatou, ka puta i te wai au, ki te ao marama. Humie, huie, e taikie. We acknowledge, greet those things above, the sky, the universe and the heavens. We greet those things below the earth in all its entirety. Cast all negativity to the distant horizons. Cover us with a cloak of affection and love. As a treasure bestowed upon us, so we may enter into enlightenment. Let it be found and fixed. Yes, fixed. Agreed by all.
Kia ora.
We're going to sing our Waiata. Are we? Come help, Glenda.
Very much. Thank you, Councillor Glenda, for stepping in as well. That's great. I did ask who was the singer in the group. Two now, that's good. Well done, thank you. Apologies, we have an apology from our independent member Mike Timmer. Mike is really disappointed he can't be here, and he's travelling in the South Island and unable to link in via Zoom. And just heard that Michael Law will be 15 minutes late, so we'll expect Michael when he arrives. Are there any declarations of Oh, sorry. Apologies. Move it in a seconder. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah. Janine? All in favour? Carried. Or anyone against? Carried. Are there any declarations of interest to declare for this meeting? No? Okay. Thank you. That's cool. There are no minutes to be referred to as they were in the last triennium. So you'll notice on the agenda for this meeting that we have our new terms of reference with very clear 5 key objectives for the committee going forward. So we're building on the work that was done before and moving forward. The first item on our agenda is the Audit Management Report for the year ended the 30th of June. I'd like to welcome Chris Webby, our Audit Director from Audit New Zealand, and please join us, Chris. I'm going to hand over first, before we ask you to speak or we move forward, I'm going to ask Mike Fermor for any comments he wishes to make.
Thank you. I was reflecting on this morning. I have in my report acknowledgement acknowledgement of the work of Audit New Zealand and staff to get the audit report over the line within the statutory timeframes. It's probably fair to say over the last 3 years it's been a very difficult environment through COVID and resources, impact on resources, and last year particularly with the port entities and the complexity that brought to the whole process. So I do want to acknowledge that. We also actually have in the room Lane Poppy, who is our financial accountant. While the annual report is a team effort, I can't actually take much credit for it. Lane shoulders the burden of the work of the finance team, so I do want to acknowledge him as well. So with that, Chris, over to you.
Thank you. I'll take the report as read. Happy to take any questions throughout or at the end. As Mike said, definitely an achievement to get to this point. There are a few councils that are still not signed, so actually having you signed before statutory deadline is an achievement in itself. Yes, the key things from the audit will be around the audit opinion, and that's just the emphasis of matter around the 3 waters reform. That is relevant for all councils that have 3 waters, so you're not the only council that has it. Every council that has 3 waters has that emphasis matter included. This year there was a lot of movement with regards to contracts and revaluation. So infrastructure required a revaluation this year. That was out of cycle. That meant there was a lot more pressure on council as well, and a bit more pressure on us because we have to audit the valuation. Sometimes the comment is, are you doing the valuation as well? Because we look at sometimes too much, according to some engineers. So I'm happy to say that we were happy with the valuation and were able to sign off that it was appropriate. One area of the report that refers to the Locals Members Interest Act. Council had to seek approval from the OAG, so that is when there's a contract of over 25,000, they need approval from OAG. So the council was able to go through the OAG, but our recommendation is there should be a process in place that stops it from happening, so you can actually get approval before the fact. I think that's the key parts of the report I want to bring up, and I'm happy to take any questions anyone may have.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions on the audit report? Can I then please ask, you raised the issue of passwords and authentications. Is two-factor authentication standard across councils?
That's the way it's going. That's our recommendation going forward. With our organisation, we have two-factor authentication as well. It's just best practice now going forward.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Kate.
Thank you. I've got 2 questions. One's about the matter of emphasis and the other is timing, given that we've got some statutory time frames that have gone back to how they were. So perhaps I'll start with that one first. In terms of your team, I know Mike's talked about it from our end of things, about the importance of making sure that he's got appropriate staff really to meet the new old timeframes. But what are you thinking about your ability to cope with those timeframes this year, Chris?
Yeah, so what we've done as an organisation, we've increased our capacity, we've increased our auditors to ensure that we can meet the deadlines. So that's our key focus. We'll be working with Mike and his team around the timing, and we'll be looking at utilising the statutory deadline as well. So statutory deadline is the end of October, and that's the date that we'll be looking around to sign these accounts going forward for this year. But we've increased our staff to ensure that we have the right capacity to ensure that we can meet the deadlines.
Awesome. So you'll do it no sleep, but it sounds like.
Well, that's the plan.
More than that's working well. The second one is more around the matter of emphasis in probably Three Waters as well. Is there anything, like I'm expecting that the matter of emphasis will remain in place for this year in relation to Three Waters?
Yes, at this stage I would expect it to, but if something changes before you sign, then that could impact it. So I can't comment if anything is going to change in that space, but at this stage I would expect there to be an emphasis matter in the audit report for the 23 year.
There's nothing on the horizon.
Not that I'm aware of, but you never know with the government that if they change.
Thank you.
I'm on Appendix 1 on page 37, I think it is. I assume that's related to this report. It's kind of all bundled together. So there's a status of previous recommendations. I know there's a number that are outstanding or in progress. Do we have any concerns about those that are in progress or outstanding? I mean, they seem to be okay, but they're also some of them first raised some time ago.
I don't have any significant concerns at this stage to the internal controls over the organisation, but it is something that I recommend that you actually look at clearing. And this time around as well, we can discuss some of them, and what might happen is management accepts the risk. So sometimes there's a recommendation we make, you make the assessment and go, okay, it would be good, but actually it's only costs too much to do, we'll accept the risk and then I can clear it from your management report. It's just kind of like when you do a full risk assessment. There are areas that you look at, and to have a control in one spot, it actually might cost $50,000, but the potential is you could only lose $500. So in that situation, you'd accept that risk. So that's kind of the same with the management report. Unless it's so fundamental, then we'll be having a different conversation.
Mark, have you got any response to that? Because there are a number that have been outstanding sometimes.
The request is for us to report back internal progress on the outstanding items, and the team will clear a number by June. We cleared probably 9 or 10 by June last year. And reporting back to this committee, I would expect there will be a few that we will recommend that council accept the risk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, absolutely, David.
Through you, Madam Chair, and just to add to what Mr. Fillmore has said there, I think historically management have maybe been a little ambitious in trying to tackle everything that the auditor has raised, and has not been in the habit of acknowledging and willingly tolerating some risk. It is a change in our approach that we're putting in place at the moment, so we'll be more selective, prioritise the most critical risks first, and have an appetite for some of the more minor stuff, in recognition that we simply don't have the resource to change the world.
You don't? Can I just add, historically we have included these in our corrective actions report. I think that was what we call that report, where we actually identified outstanding actions from not only internal audit but external audit as well. And I think going forward, I'd prefer, as the chair of this committee, to see a separate report coming back based on the external audit and progress towards achievement of these particular issues, or in fact coming back to say, that management are recommending we accept this particular risk. So particularly for a while, just so we keep track of it, and I absolutely accept what David said, and that those lists became quite significant in terms of the numbers of things on them that we were trying to achieve. And I think this way it will help us be much more focused on that external public accountability around the external audit for this committee. So that's what I'm suggesting we do going forward. So that would pick up the point that you've made, Mayor Andrew, too, about these are older, we've accepted them, or we've actually dealt with them in a separate report. People comfortable generally with that? Any other questions or comments on the audit report? No? If not, then I'll put the motion that the Risk and Insurance Committee receive the report, Audit Management Report for the year ended 30th of June 2022. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Kate and Councillor Peter. Thank you. All those in favour?
I'd like to just add to that briefly, if I may.
Yes, absolutely.
Firstly, thank you, Chris and your team. It was a difficult year last year, and working with changing deadlines and priorities and lockdowns and things wasn't easy. So we really appreciate the service that the auditors have given our council. Likewise, thank you to our team for their hard work. Just in conversation with Chris before, I think it would be fair to relay that, and this is not a new thing, that the auditor has a good relationship with our team, I think, and I think Chris has already said that, appreciates the relationship, you know, and we got there on time, you know, with some very difficult deadlines, so I guess that attests to that relationship. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you, Kate, and we really do appreciate the work that goes into this. We get this report and sort of probably critically analyse it, but you know there's a lot of other really there's a lot of work that goes into it, and we do really appreciate you know both teams for what you have done and achieved this year. So I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, Chris, and yeah, thanks for communicating with us and keeping us informed too. Thank you. All right. Now I'm going to move to item 4.2, which is a strategic risk top 10 report for February 2023. Debbie, I know this is your report. I just would like to, before we move into that report, I'd just like to open up for David for any emerging risks or anything else you want to add to the strategic risk view for the organisation currently. I know we've done an ELT risk assessment or a review of the risks in February. Quite a bit of this report is based on the older work and some of February's work, but is there anything else that you would just like to highlight, particularly as the Chief Executive? Thanks, David.
I suppose there's two aspects that I would take the opportunity to highlight. The first being some of the outputs of the review of the ELT, review of the risk register in terms of new risks that are going on to the strategic risk register, and not all of those feature in the top 10. And then the second aspect is in terms of our continuing evolving practices around the management of risk. So taking the first one, we have amended and removed some of the risks related to the 3 waters and RMA reforms and effectively consolidated them down into a single new risk that looks at the holistic impacts of the reforms program at large. Given the interdependency between the two, it doesn't make sense to isolate them from each other. The other new risk that is being escalated onto the strategic risk register and will likely be a permanent resident there is relating to cybersecurity. We have, there's plenty of cause for that to be, from an organisational point of view, one of the top risks. So we're making sure that it's firmly on our radar and we've got suitable controls in place and it's under regular review, because it's an ever-evolving and ever-threatening world in the cyberspace. In terms of changes to the management practice, we are trying to move away from a little bit of a clunky model where the whole of ELT gets together on a quarterly basis and rummages through what's strategic risk register to one that is much more live and dynamic. So we need to make some changes to our systems, open up access so that all of our staff can be inputting directly into the risk register on a live basis, updating the controls, updating the rating of risks based on where we actually find ourselves on a particular moment in time. It will be much more responsive. You will likely see a lot more churn and turnover in terms of the risk register changing more frequently. That in itself is a good thing. Stagnance in our risk register is probably a smoke signal that we're not managing our risks. And our focus needs to shift from, I suppose, its current place where we're looking at the whole of the risk register and trying to identify the new hazards that might be affecting us. There's still a place for that, but we need to put a lot more focus on our actual critical controls and looking at both preventative and then damage limitation controls. How do we reduce the likelihood of risk being realised, and then once it has been realised, how do we mitigate the damage that might be caused by it? And then evaluating the effectiveness of those controls, making sure that they are in place where we have organisational risks and controls, that we have consistency of their application, and that we don't have pockets of good practice in one department that don't make it to another department. So hopefully that's helpful, and I haven't just rambled for 5 minutes.
No, that is helpful. Understanding the process and how you're going to change the process to make it more dynamic going forward is really good, and working across the organisation. So thank you for that. Appreciate that. Debbie, over to you.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to present the top 10 strategic risk report, and also draw your attention to the comments that the CE has just made. Risk is dynamic, so there will be some changes as we move forward, both with the risk profiles and the way risks are managed by the wider ELT group. So I'm going to take the report as read and answer any questions if necessary. Thank you.
Yeah, Andrew.
So I noticed that 3 of the top 10 are related to future local government. And my question is twofold. First of all, can they not be bundled up? And the second one relates to yes, it's just a concept that started over at the moment, and it's now it's more land. So the first question is, why can't they be rolled up? Second one is, I'll answer that one first.
Yes, they are being rolled out. So in the review version that you will see, your next meeting you see is just see that all the reform things are being rolled up.
Okay.
So it's actually the electoral level government, and you're right in that we don't have enough information at the moment, but I think it's clear that we identify that the risk is there. And as that information comes along, it was meant to be the 28th of February, it has been delayed. We can then update on as information comes in.
Yep. Okay. That makes sense.
At the time this was done, that was the information we had.
Yeah. So it's better to raise it than not. Yeah.
And the second?
That basically was the answer to the second one was give it, it's not clear about what it looks like, but I guess that what you're doing is signalling that it's going to be disruptive. So therefore you're putting it on the table now, and we'll wait and see how it plays out.
Yeah, and while it could be disruptive for different parts of the organisation in different ways, for this committee, it's like this thing is going to impact on the organisation. And understanding, in a more composite way, what all of those things could mean once we're clear about what it does mean. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to Michael, Councillor Michael. Yeah. Kia ora. Welcome. So we've noted that earlier on, so it's great that you. Any other questions? Josh, Councillor Josh.
Thank you. Yeah, just continuing on from Matt Andrews' question about the future of local government, I imagine that's been separated out from the rest of the risk around reforms because there's not actually any legislation in place around it yet. Is that the reason for the?
So, through you, Madam Chair, again, the risk register you have in front of you is a reflection of the point in time that it was at during February. When you get the updated version, you will see the new risk that has come into place that will bundle up all of the reform risk, including Future for Local Government, because effectively some of the product of the Future for Local Government could be mitigations to some of the challenges that the reforms will present to Council. So, for example, losing the revenue for our 3 order service will defund some of our overhead. Picking up new services under the future of Future for Local Government could restore some of that revenue by picking up new services. So the two are fundamentally linked, just as the RMA reform is as well. So that's why we're moving to a single consolidated risk.
Okay. The second question is around, I guess, the scope of the risk more broadly. I noticed there's nothing in here about the risk of infrastructure or service failure, and I wondered why that was. So I guess, sorry if I continue on from that for a bit of context. I'm thinking about the impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle and bridges being taken out and all that sort of thing. I can't broadly see anything in here about the risk to our infrastructure.
I can respond to that one through the chair. What you're seeing here is your top 10 risks. There are a number of risks that sit below that, which is where the infrastructure one actually sits. So this committee had asked for in the last triennium to just see if it's meeting the top 10 risks, and that's what's been presented here today. I can assure you that the infrastructure one is sitting in there, but it's not in the top 10. But having said that, every time we do a review, things do change. This is quite fluid.
Thank you.
The other thing, Councillor Josh, is that it's very clear in our new terms of reference around business continuity planning, including whether disaster recovery plans have been tested periodically. And at the Chair's briefing last week, we discussed bringing something back to the next meeting based on the experience of Cyclone Gabrielle and, just us being assured and being able to assure full council that systems and things are in place. Oh. Councillor Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In my work as a councillor, if I see a new risk, how do I register that? How do I bring it to your attention? All the process.
Through you, Madam Chair, you should have a conversation with me.
Yeah.
Is there something you want to bring to the table?
I'll go to the CEO.
Right, thank you. That's good. And with the strategic risk, I mean, even like when we get the full strategic risk register at the next meeting, one of our focuses should also be on, are those mitigations, sufficient, or do we have other ideas about what would mitigate that risk going forward? So this is just the added value for all of that, from all of our thinking in taking these forward and making sure that we've got all our best thinking on it. Is there anything else, Debbie, from you? Right. Councillor Peter, you've finished? Yep, that's cool. Okay. I'll put the motion that the Risk and Assurance Committee receive the report, the Strategic Risk Top 10 report, February 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you. Any other comments before we... No? Cool. Oh, there was second. There was Jenny or Neil? Andrew? Yep. Yeah, sorry, I should have said that. That's cool. Okay. No, it's not a good thing. Okay. All those in favour? Aye. Anyone against? Great. That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Next on our agenda is the Chief Executive's Health and Safety Due Diligence Activity Report for March 2023. Over to you, David.
through you, Madam Chair, I'll take the report as read, but just highlight here one of my obligations under the Health and Safety at Work Act as the Chief Executive is to undertake my own personal due diligence. This means that I have to make sure that the organisation has the knowledge, the skills, the resources to manage the risks to our people, both our staff and our community, and to also satisfy myself that the controls that we say we're putting in place to manage and mitigate risk are actually hitting the ground, and that they are genuinely effective. In the spirit of transparency, I've been putting these due diligence activity reports up to you so that you can see what I am actually doing to deliver on that obligation. You will also hopefully, from reading the report, see how some of the observations that I've made when I've been doing site visits and checking on what our practices actually are translating into action. So, for example, making sure we have adequate resource. We're now in the process of recruiting for a dedicated health and safety manager, and Ms. Watson has moved across to be focused purely on our risk management framework. That is to give us the additional capacity to deliver on our responsibilities, both from a risk management point of view, which Debbie has done, Ms. Watson's done an excellent job of over the years, but then also going forward. Nothing particularly significant to report in terms of the due diligence log from this previous quarter. Undertook a number of site visits to the Sargent project. Really pleased to see a high standard of health and safety management there. Likewise, visiting the port and some of our roading footpath replacement jobs and the splash centre. Very pleased with the team at the splash centre in terms of how they're managing some of our critical risks around confined space entry and changing the chlorine gas. Those things are under what I would call the sticky category, stuff that kills you. To see robust procedures in place and good proactive management across those was highly reassuring to me, for sure. There is also a note mentioned there around the Royal Opera House. A number of actions have been taken to mitigate some of the risks there around the ageing equipment. Whilst that has significant heritage value and we're doing our best to preserve it for posterity and display purposes, it is no longer fit for operational use. The hemp rope system cannot be load tested reliably, so it can't be used to support people or to suspend heavy equipment and loads where there could be a risk of falling on somebody. We're still working through that, but at this stage we've been through the initial process of at least making everything safe, and we're now going into the next stage of putting in modern safe equivalents so that we can restore all of the functionality of that venue. The final point that I would make is that we have engaged CHASANS, Construction Health and Safety New Zealand, as an independent professional body that specialise in health and safety. They have now concluded their review of all of the council's health and safety practices, as well as our health and safety culture and the safety climate that we create as a management and leadership team. I've seen a draft of their report and they're in the process of finalising it. I intend to bring a copy of that report to this committee when it's ready. So far, on my review of the draft, no particular surprises are contained therein, really confirming what I thought we already knew, but also giving us a really good blueprint for how we can make our next surge and improvement, with a particular focus on managing and mitigating those pan-organisational critical risks. Again, the stuff that falls in that sticky category, stuff that kills you. Happy to take questions from that.
Yeah, Andrew?
One's and from a health and safety perspective is in reference to your confidence around the journey that the organisation is on, particularly in local government, which is highly regulatory and legislative in regard to a just culture. So what sort of maturity do you feel the organisation is on from reporting health and safety incidents and from a just culture perspective?
So that is one area where I think we made some really good progress. And again, this is a journey, and acknowledging the good work that has gone before us is really important. Started from a really low base. We've now made our kind of first set of improvement strides. We're now ready to take the next step forward, but we've got some work to do to remove some of the safety clutter that has been created, that has now in itself become a barrier to reporting. So some of our systems are perceived to be a little too hard to use when it comes to reporting, so people have given up trying. The management and leadership need to put some sustained effort into creating a safe environment where people can report issues, knowing that they're taken seriously, knowing that there won't be negative consequences, because we're a learning organisation that wants to know about this stuff so that we can make improvements, and then fostering a really high reporting culture. There's some clear and relatively easy steps we can make that are going to be highlighted in the Chasms report, and they'll come to us as recommendations, which I expect we'll be able to support and endorse and move forward with relatively quickly.
Piece you just mentioned about being safe to raise, and in comparison to commercial organisations, versus local government, often people feel reluctant to speak up, I think that's great.
Just to be clear, the feedback that I've got both from Chasms and then from my own experiences with staff is, at the moment, most of the barriers to the reporting are around frustrations that our systems are too hard to use, rather than, let's say, a fear of reprisals from management.
Yeah, so it's a health and safety system, not the culture.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Kate.
Thank you. My question probably is along the same theme as Matt Andrews. But firstly, thank you very much for this report. I mean, it's outstanding in terms of understanding of, when I'm asked, how did I know that such and such was such and such, and you provide a lot of those answers here. That said, I'm asking for another answer. And I guess it's, again, as I said, a carry on from what you were just answered in relation to me, Andrew, and it particularly relates to reporting near misses and your suggestion that it's not from fear of reprisal, it's because of frustration with a clunky system. So, two questions. How will we know that near misses are getting reported? And two, how do we know that it's actually, as you say, that it's the clunky system and not fear of reprisals from management in all pockets of this organisation?
So, through you, Madam Chair, some of the changes we put in relatively recently at a management level are for the executive team to receive a health and safety dashboard that includes lagging and leading indicators. So one of the really good leading indicators is a high volume of near-miss reporting, where people are proactively telling us there's something here that could cause an accident, but it hasn't yet. So here's your free opportunity to fix it before it does cause an accident. Our numbers at the moment are low, and because we can see where those come from through different departments, we can also see whether we've got a representative spread across the organisation. When we have finished refining the content of those dashboards, because they're still relatively new and they're not quite where they need to be, I would also like to be reporting those to this committee so that you have visibility on the numbers of reports, you have visibility on what are the critical risks that we have, key controls in place, and how effective do we think those controls are, and a good split between those leading indicators that tell you how you're tracking before something goes wrong, and then those lagging indicators that tell you how many things went wrong, i.e. how many accidents did you have, and what are the learnings you got from the investigation reports. So once you have that information, you should start to then be able to build up a good picture of do we have a just culture? Are people willingly coming forward and reporting things because you'll see the volume? Have you got a good spread because you'll see it department by department?
Okay, thank you. Just one final question. Your visits, I know that elected members were invited to go on visits with you. Is that going to be an ongoing business as usual?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, absolutely.
Cool, excellent, thank you. Waiata.
Thanks, Ben. Councillor Michael.
Two questions. We did see a few months ago around the partnership PCBUs, how we need to integrate those processes into our own value chain to ensure the end-to-end health and safety of our people and the people who are of our people. Where were we up on that so far? Have we started that work yet? From a process point of view?
Yeah, so in terms of managing our supply chain, I'm reasonably pleased with what I've seen from the draft report from Chasms at the moment, because it hasn't highlighted any major issues there. There are some improvements we can make. Having a pre-qualification process that's quite generic but still a little bit costly for our contractors to go through is of questionable value. But we also are, through our tender processes, asking quite job-specific or project-specific, safety-related questions and evaluating and rewarding contracts on that basis. So we don't have big gaps, but there's definitely still room for improvement that we can make in that. I'm really focusing on the communication of what do we know about our assets that could be a risk to you. Once we pass that information on, we can also talk to our designers and get them to communicate. So what have we done to design that risk out before our contractors even get on site? Then we need to close the communication loops. If we have an accident, we have clear reporting lines back to us as one of the PCBUs with overlapping duty care. We can then do our job properly to seek assurance that they're doing their job properly.
Awesome, thank you for that. And my last question is around mental health, health and safety. What sort of ongoing risks do we be aware of for checks and prevention of mental health?
So this really comes back to probably one of my comments before about having a focus on those critical risks. The mental health and then in conjunction with that, the risk or the threat of physical and verbal abuse from our customers are in combination a risk that really ought to be one of our critical controls, particularly as it's quite prevalent across the full breadth of the organisation. So we do have some work to do in that regard, both in terms of preventative controls to stop our people experiencing that kind of abuse that leads to mental health issues, but then also in terms of, if it does occur, what is the support and the recovery that we can wrap around people to, again, do the damage limitation piece. So that will come in due course, but I can't give you a full answer right now because we've got some work to do in that space.
Nice, and just to follow up then, are we looking at leading and lagging indicators for mental health? So we can create. Perfect, thank you.
So we've got access, because we've recently joined the Business Leaders Health and Safety Forum. They've produced some excellent guides on how to manage mental wellbeing in the workplace, a kind of 4-quadrant model that looks at how do you prevent and protect people from harm. If they experience it, how do you support them? How do you help them recover from it? And then also, how do you create positive, healthy work that nurtures positive mental wellbeing as well? We'll likely be adopting some of those things, but again, we've got some work to do as a management team to land what it is. We'll bring it to you in due course when it's ready.
Any other questions? I just had a couple. That you talked about the health and safety position. That'll be absolutely key to enable Debbie to get on with the role that she has, but also for all of us work, I would have thought. Where are you up to in terms of recruitment? And
so we are interviewing, I think, a short list of 4 candidates on Monday and Tuesday next week, so quite well progressed down that pathway. One comment I would make is you will experience a shift in tone and focus once that role is filled. we're looking for somebody specifically who can help build an organisational culture of safety so that our operations teams own health and safety, and it is something that pervades everything we do, every decision we make, and their role is going to be more a subject matter expert and a guide rather than someone who does health and safety for the organisation.
Right, thank you. That's really useful clarification. And then sort of a follow-up question. Does every staff member have a health and safety requirement in their employment contract or responsibility?
Through you, Chair, I'm going to be careful I don't make a liar out of myself here. There is a standard section in our PDs for health and safety obligations. I have not hand on heart checked every single PD for every single 300 member of staff, so I couldn't say absolutely, but Catherine, yes?
Great, thank you. Thank you. That's cool. That's great, thank you. Any other questions or comments about the report? Yeah, so I'll put the motion that the Risk and Assurance Committee receive the report, Chief Executive's Health and Safety Due Diligence Activity Report, March 2023. We've got Councillor Jenny has moved it, and a second, Councillor Peter. Any other comments?
Yes, please. It is really great to have a health and safety geek as a CEO. I've just got to acknowledge that, and following on from some of the comments made from some of my colleagues, one of our jobs is, to ask the question, how do I know that the things that we're being told are happening are actually happening? And one of the ways we do that is to attend some of the site visits, and I had the pleasure of doing a Victoria Avenue footpath replacement project site visit in December. And it's really great to see the level of seriousness that our contractors take with their staff and the work that they do for us. So I'm really happy with this report, the focus that you put on it and what you bring to it. So thank you.
Thank you. So all those in favour of anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, David. It's been a lot of work, Okay, we're up to item 4.4, the Workshop Action Plan Update. Debbie, please.
Thank you. Through the Chair, the purpose of this report is to update the committee on a workshop that actually happened in December 2021 under the prior iteration of Audit and Risk. But having said that, there are some really good key things in there that I think the committee should consider going forward. And one of the most important things in there to draw the committee's attention is to develop a 3-year strategy. What does this committee want to achieve? Some of it has been achieved through the terms of reference, but again, there are some opportunities going forward. So I'm going to take the report as read and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Debbie. This was a particularly productive workshop, I think, and a number of ideas and sort of came out of it. It was important to capture those, and that at the time we have moved on, and some we have actually achieved. But if there are any questions about it or any other points that anybody wants to raise that would be useful right now, we will be having another workshop, I think, in September, yes, where we'll look more broadly at how the committee is going and where we need to focus. But are there any questions about this update on the workshop action plan at this stage? Oh, Councillor Michael.
On develop a 3-year strategy, need direction from the committee. Is this the committee? Yes. So when did that do for us? So apologies, there's an action on the committee to make a decision around a 3-year strategy for audit and risk, including success measures and indicators, which sounds really cool.
Yes.
Is that in our calendars? Is it soon?
No, what will be is that you will see an invitation coming shortly. This is our first meeting, so again, it was looking at the work program and how things will actually flow. So the September will be a workshop, and what normally happens there, we have the workshop in the morning, and then the meeting happens in the afternoon, so it's not too disruptive to people's schedules, and then we take that forward. So there's an opportunity for learning and some education in how we actually do things, but also for that communication flow between officers and yourselves as the committee.
That's great. Thanks, Debbie. I think I'd like to almost get us a draft going. I think we've got, our new terms of reference. I think there are some quite clear areas. And if we have the capacity, we could get a draft up earlier than the September workshop to at least give us an idea of what a strategy would look like. And
I just love metrics, so
Yes.
seeing how we
Yes.
build success would be
Yes,
awesome.
absolutely. And I think at the end of at the end of this training, I think we were all, we can report really clearly on the activities that we've actually undertaken and the work that we've done. But to actually show some ongoing improvement and development, I think would be really valuable for us all going forward. And so that would come out of at least a draft strategy that we could work on. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions about the workshop action plan? Councillor Kate.
Perhaps not the plan as such, but in various meetings over the last while, we've talked about a risk appetite for councillors.
Yep. Yes, it's
forgive me if you've got it in here, but what are we thinking, understanding what councillors' risk appetite is?
Yeah, we realise it's one of those areas that need to go to full council from this committee, and I think we've now put that in our work plan for the year. Is that right, Debbie?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's in the work program for a little bit further down the year because it links back into the review of the strategic risk register and also the leading edge strategy review. So there are some things that segue into that. So it's really about a timing thing because there are only 4 meetings of this committee per year.
Does that make sense to you, Councillor Kate?
Sort of. It doesn't mean it wasn't a good answer. It just means that my thinking might be a bit foggy. So what would come first, the strategy or understanding the risk appetite of council? I guess it's kind of one's maybe a subset of the other, but I'm not quite sure what way around. I do have another question. The other question was, respond to that if you like. If not,
I think my thinking was, being clear about the longer term strategic objectives of the council and the long term plan, and at the same time looking at what the risks and the risk appetite might be within those. But it could be done either way.
Thank you. Just in terms of the development of the strategy, would that be just the committee or would that be open to all councillors?
I think it could be open to all councillors. An invitation could be extended for that. Is that...
That's absolutely what I would hope.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And it's mainly just pulling together, this is what this committee has been charged with, here's how that will be delivered, and here's how we'll actually measure that, going forward, and the value that's added.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for that, Debbie, for that update. I'll put the recommendation that we receive the report, the workshop action plan update, February 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Kate and Councillor Josh, seconded. Thank you. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. All right. Debbie, over to you for the internal audit program updates and internal audit charter paper.
Thank you. Through the Chair, the internal audit program update identifies to the committee that the next meeting will receive the fleet management audit that is with management for updating at the moment, and also that the internal audit charter will be updated. It was presented to the committee last year, having been through also ELT, and just to acknowledge within that the sourcing of the internal audit function will be completed by an external audit. We will outsource that function. So that is one of the key changes. Again, the internal audit charter will be presented to the next meeting. I'm happy to take the report as read from there and answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions on the internal audit program update? No. I do have some comments from independent member Mike Timmer. You'll recall that when we decided to insource internal audit, there was quite a discussion about the process that was undertaken at the time. And this time we have gone away from insourcing to outsourcing again in a slightly different model, but that's basically what we've done. And Mike had a very strong view that this committee should have been consulted around that, and it should have come here about to this committee to at least contribute to that decision. What I did talk to Mike about was the timing of all of this, and the committee hadn't been reformed when this decision was taken, but I did want to table his comments. He's very supportive of an outsourced, in-source type model, and he's very supportive of a strategic approach to internal audit, which I think when you come back with the charter and when you come back with recommendations about priorities for internal audit, we'll get the opportunity to actually say, yes, that's the most strategically important internal audit at present. So I just wanted to table those comments from Mike Timmer, and I think that was important to do that for him. Any other comments or questions on that? Thank you very much. Councillor Kate, anyone seconding? Councillor Jenny, thank you. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. And Debbie, over to you again, the draft committee work programme for 2023. This sets out our sort of framework for the year, so just talk us through that.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
4.6.
4.6, yep.
Workshop action plan, draft, that's what we're up to. Is it draft committee work programme for 2023? No, that's not online.
4.6 is internal policy assurance review.
Oh, it's not on
Overview?
my list. Okay, okay. We've missed that off, yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Here it is, yep. Okay, internal policy assurance overview. Debbie, over to you. Thank you.
Me again. Through the chair, the internal policy assurance overview comes out of your terms of reference for this committee. So what it's actually about is it gives you, as part of the internal control, and it gives you the opportunity to have assurance that we have relevant policies and processes and procedures in place, and more importantly that they're actually periodically reviewed and updated. So I'm going to take the report as read. What you will see, however, in the work programme going forward when we get to the next item will be an update of when those policies are due. So at the back of this report is a little schedule of things that are actually a work in progress as well. So happy to take the report as read and answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions on this report? If there's none, can I ask a couple? Oh, I beg your pardon, sorry.
That's all right. No,
yeah,
no,
Andrew,
it's
yeah,
fine,
you
no. So, look, it's not really a question. It's more of a, I guess, question terms. But have you? This looks like a pretty good list, and I've seen lists like this before. Have you compared yourselves with what other councils, the list that they have for review, just to make sure that this is actually an exhaustive list? Because I wouldn't know what's missing if there was anything missing. So, are you confident that that is our list?
As with anything, policies do get developed and often come out of, as we saw with Audit New Zealand and updates like that. I have looked at other councils, I've looked at other opportunities. I've also been in this role for a little period of time and know what policies actually make sense to this committee. So you don't get, I guess the expression is, too caught up in the operational weeds. These are policies that directly relate to risk. and they are also referred to within your current terms of reference. But happy as we move on to add other relevant policies that have a risk lens across them.
My question and one from Mike Timmer was similar, so thank you for that, Mayor Andrew. Is there a list of policies in the organisation, of all the policies? Anywhere? No. Yes?
We have a list of policies, but the issue that we actually have is some of those policies overlap externally to some of our business and some of them are internal.
Right.
So I'm actually working with, Catherine has actually just left, to work through what actually do they look like.
Okay.
And who's their owner, when do they need to be reviewed, and do we actually sometimes need them? Because sometimes we can create a policy when it should be a guidance or a guideline or a process rather than a full-fledged policy. So it's actually having a little bit of a stock take of what we have, why we have it, and do we need it?
Right, okay, so it's a work in progress and that there may be other ones that would come in front of this committee in the future. I do, going back to the audit report, I do think we should see the credit card policy, and that I don't think is currently on our list. And so stuff that's coming out of the audit report like that, I think that we probably need to have on our list.
And look, just to add to what Ms. Watson said there, we actually discussed this at our ELT meeting earlier this week. Our ultimate goal here is to have a single register that is the single source of truth for every policy, both internal and external. And who is the owner, what is the review cycle, and for that system to automatically trigger reminders for policy reviews when they're approaching their expiration date. Once that's in place, happy to provide full visibility over what's in it.
Great, thanks.
Or what's not.
That's great, thank you. Any other points on this paper? Questions? Councillor Jenny?
Just following on from what David has just said, when is this likely to be available? It's not a pressure question, just a question.
Through you, Madam Chair, won't be next week. I can't put a time frame on it. It is something that I think is, it will require a bit of resource to actually go through and make sure we've done a proper search of all of our document management systems and we've got a full account. But it's not something that should take months and months and months.
Thank you. So I'll put, if there are other questions, I'll put that motion that the Risk and Assurance Committee receive the report, draft committee, oh no, I've got the wrong one, internal policy assurance overview report. Councillor Josh moves it, Councillor Jenny second. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried, thank you. Now we're up to the one that was on my list. So this is the draft committee work programme for 2023. Over to you, Debbie.
Thank you. Through the Chair, I'd like to present to the committee the draft Risk and Assurance Committee work programme, bearing in mind that it is something that can be amended as different issues come along, and I think it's important for the committee to engage with this work programme, and also to understand sometimes that the items in there may have to be shuffled around depending on different priorities. So happy to take the report as read and answer any questions as necessary. I just want to add for the benefit of the Chair that I've already added into my draft copy the Audit New Zealand organisational improvement follow-up for the next meeting, and also the business continuity and emergency preparedness update for the next meeting as well. It's just not on your copies because it's in pen on mine. Thank you.
Quite comprehensive. It's setting out our work for the year. Debbie's aligned it to the key priorities for us in our terms of reference, so it sort of lines up and gives us the points at which we can monitor and know that we're going to get through those items that are currently listed in our terms of reference. Are there any questions or comments on the work programme? Councillor Peter.
Yes, and that is, do you feel that 5 or 4 meetings per year is enough for the Risk and Assurance Committee to cover all our bases?
it's not something I can actually comment on because, again, with the dynamic side of risk, if we need to have an additional meeting in between, we do have the ability through our democratic processes to call an extraordinary meeting. So at this point with the workshop, I think that is adequate to give you reporting at that time. With that, again, having the opportunity to have an extraordinary meeting if we need to. Having said that, at the end of this year, when we have a look at your performance reporting that comes through, if there are some things that come out of that, then again, it's an opportunity for the organisation to consider.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Any other comments, questions? Just one other point for me. We talked at our workshop a while ago about how we reported through to the full council, and generally, you know, the minutes were going up to the full council. There are some aspects of our work that I think would be really useful for them to be highlighted to the full council, like the risk appetite, maybe the strategic risks at a certain point during the year, that the full council actually see those and have any contribution they might want to make them. So we are working on processes to make sure that we highlight those aspects. The other thing that's changed with the standing orders is that the minutes will not be fully describing every item going up to the full committee. So I think it's even more important that we highlight areas that we would like the full council to basically consider or take a bit more time to have a look at. So we'll be working on those processes too going forward. Okay, everybody's okay. I'll put that motion. Oh, was there something else? No. Put the motion that we receive the committee work program for 2023. Move in a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Kate. Mayor Andrew, thank you, seconder. And all those in favour?
I will make a comment.
Sorry, Kate, I missed that process. Yeah.
I think the question about the number of meetings is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of an answer to that, I'm very satisfied with the work program and the number of meetings, the work that's happening to improve the whole safety culture at council.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, all those in favour? Aye. Anybody against? That's carried. Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely the items listed on page 76 of this agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Josh and Councillor Jenny as seconder. All those in favour? No one against? No, that's carried. Thank you.